Hello, my name is Geneva Malone with the Levy Senior Center Foundation, and we are happy to welcome both our in-person and remote audiences to today's Levy Longevity, Medical Cannabis, the Endocannabinoid System, and You, Risks and Benefits of Cannabis Sativa, presented by Dr. Leslie Mendoza Temple. Dr. Mendoza Temple is the chair of the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board for the Illinois Department of Public Health and a clinical professor of family medicine at Endeavor Health and the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. She is also the medical director of Endeavor's Integrative Medicine Program in Glenview. We are happy to have Dr. Mendoza Temple with us today to present the third Levy Longevity of the Health Hub Endeavor series. This program is made possible by Endeavor Health, the Levy Senior Center Foundation, and the City of Evanston. As always, we appreciate your support of the foundation as we continue to work to connect our community of older adults. As a reminder, please reserve all your questions until the end of the presentation. At that time, if you have a question, we ask that you raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you so our remote audiences and everyone in this room can hear your question as well. I'd like to now turn things over to Dr. Mendoza Temple.
Hi, you can hear me okay? Okay. I'm never sure what my audience knows and what they don't know, so forgive this if it's too over or if it's like way too basic for you, but I wanted to go through a very comprehensive overview. So I have no disclosures, I have no relationship with industry or anyone. My role at the IDPH is as their advisory board chair. So we look at what conditions can be or not be added to the list of eligible conditions for medical use of cannabis. But I will go over adult use, recreational, because cannabis is cannabis. So I'm going to talk about how we all have our own system that helps us make our own marijuana-like substances. It's called the endocannabinoid system. We're going to talk about what is the evidence behind using it as a medicine and what are the risks, including what are the challenges also of getting products that you need, because we're now, I don't know, 8 years, no, we're 10 years after the program was passed with challenges still getting access to the type of cannabis that people are looking for in the midst of recreational eclipsing everything. Also, what are the regulatory updates? What are the laws in terms of federal versus state, and giving you some updates on there? And what is the Illinois Medical Cannabis Program? What are the logistics getting signed up? Okay, so we all have this system. It's in every cell of our body, and it helps regulate homeostasis, which is our ability to just live. Sometimes we need to sleep. Another time we need to be hungry so we can eat. But homeostasis is that moment-to-moment response to what your body needs at the time. And so it helps us relax, to drive our appetite, to help us feel sleepy when it's time, to protect ourselves from illness. So there's actually an immune-enhancing activity of cannabis, and it helps us forget pain and stress. And so a lot of people are using this for that purpose. You can use it medicinally or recreationally, and some people use it for both. But it's a really complex system. I won't go over the details of this slide, but we have receptors in our brain, our nervous system, our gut, liver, bones, pancreas. Every organ in our body has a receptor of some kind that does something with either a cannabinoid substance you got from a plant or something you made yourself. These slides will also be available to you. So we have a link, so you don't have to worry about getting it all down if you want to look. But CB1 is primarily the nervous system, and this is where THC predominantly acts. CB2 is more immune system, and we're finding out more about cannabis as a potential therapeutic substance for things like cancer and rheumatoid arthritis. But we still need a lot more research on that. And this crazy slide is just telling you, as science moves forward, there are more things we're learning about the endocannabinoid system. And there are researchers devoting their entire career to finding this tiny receptor that might have a drug developed around it. So this is just crazy, but how many different functions. We have appetite, memory, pain at the bottom. Even temperature regulation is managed by your endocannabinoid system. Okay, and these molecules here are what you make yourself. When you need to be hungry, you make 2-AG, for instance, or AEA. When you need to be relaxed, you might make one of those and not the other, and then your receptors do what they're supposed to do. So your body knows exactly what it needs at the time, and that's homeostasis. But from the flower itself, or from the plant itself, the active components of cannabis where you get the effect, the high or the relaxation, really come from the small parts, the flower and the bud, or the small leaves. But most people associate cannabis with the leaves. And there's really not that much medicine or substance in the leaves. It's the small parts. The trichomes in particular, these tiny little liquidy substances that come off of the flower. That's what we use for the use of cannabis for recreational or adult or medical purposes. But there's actually thousands of substances, but cannabinoids, over 150 to date, have been discovered. And we have terpenes, and terpenes are the thing that make your cannabis smell like skunk. If you've ever walked in around a concert and it smells like a skunk and there's no skunks around, or there's a kind of a lavendery smell. These are terpenes, or basically essential oils that also have some sort of effect on you. So when you combine that with the cannabinoids like THC, there may be something that comes together that's different from another combination of cannabinoids in a different plant, which makes this really hard to study and makes it hard to define who's going to react, how you're going to react to what. So if I gave Judy some in the back and then I gave you some, you got the same exact substance, you can have very different reactions because your body will break it down differently. So how does it work? Why does cannabis help with pain? And there have been some areas of the brain that have been identified that when they're really active, like the anterior cingulate cortex or the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, there are actually brain mapping studies looking at, you hurt somebody, you poke them with a poker, and then those parts light up on an MRI, that cannabis helps downregulate their activity. So that is one potential mechanism of why pain is relieved. But also it tends to promote the rest and digest part of you, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for digestion and when you're relaxed, for repairing stuff. But fight or flight is the other mode that many of us live in, which is the stressful, runaway, deadlines, too much on your mind, heart's racing. That's fight or flight, and that's more of the survival mode. So it helps us get into more of a relaxed state of mind, which really helps everything. So cannabis has multiple ways of working. And when I have colleagues say, well, there's no evidence that marijuana works for anything, it's just a bunch of hooey, this is not true. There was a brain trust of academics and researchers that got together and published in 2017 with the National Academy of Science a compendium of what conditions have the most research to support cannabis as a medicine. And they found, it's also available for free online. It's really long. But what we know a lot about cannabis is when you abuse it, when you drive under the influence, because the NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, has been well funded to study drugs of abuse, hence the name NIDA. So we know a lot about the cannabis effects on the downside, traffic accidents, addiction, dependence. This is not a worry-free substance, but we haven't known a lot about how can it be used as a potential medicine. So this is the highest level of conclusive evidence when they looked at all the research that was available up to 2017. Number one, treatment of chronic pain in adults, and that's huge because that can come from all kinds of things, arthritis, an injury, multiple sclerosis, cancer, that had a very good level of evidence that this panel said you reach the highest level of qualification. And that also for people who are having nausea and vomiting from chemotherapy, And for those who have multiple sclerosis that feel the muscle spasms, it seemed to help take the edge off of that. So the next level down with the evidence was good, not as good as the first category. We saw it for people who had trouble with sleep. And sleep apnea, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, all of these things interfere. And when you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't recover from the day before. And so everything is worse when you have a chronic run of insomnia. And I have to say, in my clinic where I've certified, oh gosh, I have over 750 patients that have active cards. They tell me that sleep relief seems to be the #1 reason why cannabis helps them. And I have many patients who just take a tiny bit of an edible at night, and that's it. They're not using it in the daytimes. They don't want to feel impaired or high. I do have some who do use it in the daytime because they're in a lot of pain, but the key is to not drive or do anything that could harm you or other people. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind. And then since 2017, and by the way, this talk is what I'm giving to the medical residents and grand rounds I'm giving. You guys are getting like the high level academic stuff. So so you're going to be more informed than many of your physicians, I hate to say, but there have been 5 at least randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard of medical research, where they actually have more credibility as a quality scientific study that looked at placebo versus cannabinoids for various things, particularly with pain. And they looked at fibromyalgia and neuropathy. They found that when you put CBD on the skin as a patch or a cream, it seemed to help the neuropathy. May not help it forever, but it's definitely worth a try. And they found that there were very little side effects, minimal to none, but there are side effects you can get with cannabis. So these are the studies, and you'll notice that the only one that was in the US was on CBD as oil, because you can't study THC very well in the US for medical purposes because it's still a Schedule I drug. Now I keep hearing that any day now we might hear an announcement about cannabis being descheduled. We don't know with the way things are going, but once that happens, we can have a lot more research associated with cannabis. But right now we're going to Israel and Brazil for our good research, and those are just some examples. And they're of various kinds: THC with CBD, THC by itself, oil under the tongue, inhaled, topicals. So we do see potential benefit in these high quality trials. So I have a patient, I thought I'd share a patient example. This is not a real person, but let's say we have a 75-year-old South Asian man who has atrial fibrillation, which requires him to be on blood thinners. His heart rate goes weird. He has risk of stroke, so he has to be on blood pressure meds. He does have diabetes, depression, and spinal stenosis. And he has been told, okay, you can see a lot of medications on board, including opioids. He's got 4 to 5 hydrocodone a day, gabapentin. I mean, unfortunately, I can see someone who really has that much going on. He's got fluoxetine for depression, lots of stuff going on there, including his diabetes meds. He's had 4 epidurals in 7 years. This is like worst case scenario. And he's been told, you're just not a candidate for surgery, nor does he want it. He's been through PT, and he's had acupuncture, and he's had chiropractic, but he's unable to keep all of that up because of the finances. It's not covered by insurance, and he can't get rides. So imagine like you get, and this happens a lot in integrative med. We get folks who are like, you're my last stop. I have nothing else. And that's not true, but I wish they would come. They could have tried this earlier on in their intervention, but what should we do with this patient? And so he's in pain. He's on a lot of meds. What are the interactions to think about as a physician? What do I look at? What should he do? What should he take? And so when I look at all the meds, I can see the fluoxetine can interact with the CBD and make you a little more sleepy or tired. The blood pressure medicine called diltiazem might also increase the potency of the cannabis edible he wants to try, so he might feel more impaired from that. The CBD can actually make the blood thinner less active, so are we worried about him an increased risk of stroke. There's a lot going on here, and he's got hydrocodone, he's got Vicodin on board, and gabapentin, which already are very sedating. You throw in cannabis in the mix, oh boy, now we're like super sleepy and risk, but boy, all he has to do is take maybe 2 or 3 more Vicodin a day, and we could have an overdose. So we're in a rock and a hard place. Someone who's like, I'm still in a lot of pain, I'm on all this stuff. Cannabis was the only thing I could think of. And so here's just a general rule of thumb that I think everyone in the room can use, whether you're a new user to this or you're not sure how to start. But when you look at a dose of cannabis, look at how much THC there is and let that drive your decision on how much to take. Usually an edible will have 10 milligrams per piece. So if you cut it into 4 pieces, you're getting 2.5 milligrams of THC. So I like that, or even smaller amount, like 1/8 of it for beginners. There are people who are like, that wouldn't do anything for me, but obviously that person's an experienced user. But when you take too much with an edible, it will stick with you for a while, and then you just have to wait for that to wear off. So start small, and even if nothing happens, then the following day you take a little bit more and you write it all down. So you start with 1/4 of a piece at bedtime, and then see how you slept. Did it do anything good for you? If it did nothing, then the following night you could take 1/2 of a piece. So you go up by these little increments nightly until you reach the sweet spot, knowing that the THC drives the dose. And then I think there's really no one, unless you have skin sensitivities, there's really no one who wouldn't benefit from trying a topical, like the CBD cream or the CBD THC combination cream. You put it anywhere that hurts. They do say put it on the thin skin areas like your forearm or like on top of your foot or behind the knee. But I think there's something, I don't know, psychological, like if your neck hurts, put it on your neck. You can totally do that. So put it on, but you got to put it on several times a day. Just like diclofenac, the Voltaren gel, if anyone's familiar with that, the instructions are 4 times a day. Of course, like if it's on your back, you gotta, you're wearing clothes, you gotta remember, oh, it's time to put it on. So it may be effective that way too, but get it on at least once. See how it goes. Okay, so topicals are always worth a try. This is another case of a woman who develops a urinary tract infection. Those are no fun. And she sometimes gets low back pain, and she has chronic insomnia. So she's been taking a cannabis edible every night for a long time. But lo and behold, she gets a UTI, urinary tract infection. So we put her on, let's say we put her on sulfamethoxazole. This is Bactrim, it's a mouthful. So Bactrim, a tablet twice a day for a week. Okay, what happens? She's had that antibiotic before, but she wasn't using cannabis before. But she ends up developing dizziness. Like, this is weird. Why do I feel so funky on this? And it's because there was an interaction with the Bactrim, because it works on a liver enzyme, and the THC also did, and the Bactrim actually enhanced the THC effects. So her normal edible was a lot stronger because of the antibiotic. So just be wary that if you do go on a new medication, maybe hold on your usual cannabis dose and just let the medicine, the pharmaceutical drug do its work, and then you can get back started on the cannabis. Because most of the time, that's a very common drug for UTIs. And there are many others. There we go. Okay, let me try and see if I can there we go. And these are just enzymes. Are there any healthcare people in here? Have a retired healthcare professional? Okay. Your liver breaks down lots of stuff, including alcohol, but many medications. There's different genes that are responsible for different drugs. So if you have a mutation in that, you can process drugs differently. So I have the classic, we call it, I can say it because I'm Asian, the Asian glow. So anytime I drink any alcohol at all, I turn bright red. And that is because my liver doesn't break down alcohol well. So you go to a restaurant and look for usually an Asian person anyone who looks bright red and they have a glass of wine or a beer. They are not breaking down alcohol fast. So they end up vasodilating, they get red. To me, that just says my body doesn't like alcohol. I'm a super lightweight and a very cheap date, which is very nice. But you can also have that with different medications and sensitivities. And some of these are like super common. Omeprazole, that's a acid blocking medicine for reflux and heartburn, fluoxetine, antidepressants. So we have to have a healthy respect for the potential for interactions. But it doesn't stop me from recommending cannabis. I just tell folks, just go low and increase your dose slowly, because you may be totally fine on it, but if you start too high, you'll be turned off forever. So edibles, in general, rules of thumb, they take longer to kick in, which is why you gotta like start with a small amount, write down the time you took it, wait 1 or 2 hours, and then it might kick in at that point because you have to go through all the digestive juices, and then it lasts longer, which is why edibles are nice for evening, because if you want to sleep throughout the night, you may get 6 or 7 hours of play from that little piece of edible. But if you take an edible in the daytime, then it's with you all day. So, okay, no driving, have someone drive you around, or if driving's not an issue, then fine. Like before a physical therapy session, as long as you're not feeling wobbly or feeling like you're gonna trip and fall. Tinctures are somewhere in between, where they're the liquid, they hit faster, like 15 to 30-minute onset. They last about as long, maybe not as long. And then smoking and vaping, as much as I don't like that as a physician because of the pollution you dump in your lungs every time, works fast, and you can titrate the dose. There are some folks who just feel like, inhaling it is, I feel the effect, I know how to gauge it better. That is the advantage. But then every time you inhale anything but oxygen, you are dumping little bits of carbon and other pollutants in your lungs. So it's not the best long-term everyday solution. Okay, and then here's an area that people don't explore as much, are suppositories. Putting in cannabis like as a little, waxy bullet inside the rectum or vagina for like chronic, like tailbone pain. We get laughs, but we can put it anywhere.
Ever read Naked Lunch?
Did I ever read what?
Naked Lunch?
No, I have not read Naked
Really?
Lunch. No.
That's the only
Someone's
way you can
asking
take-
about
that's
this in the
only way you
audience.
can take heroin.
Okay, well, we're gonna just say that there is the potential to use this, and in the dispensaries, the hard part is you can't find that very easily, but you can make them. Okay, and then, the patch. This is the one I wish that they kind of disappeared from the dispensaries. They're wonderful. You don't have to taste it, just goes on the skin, it stays on 12 hours. It's great, but I would really love to figure out how people could make their own, but those are tricky. Yeah, there's salves, the topicals, right there. Mary's Medicinals, if you can find it. The problem is you have so many medical patients and the recreational dispensaries, here's my editorial, the recreational dispensaries aren't carrying them. They don't carry them, the medical ones, people will buy them all, and then there's nothing left for other people. So just be wary that the supply chain has changed. I'll address that in a bit. But these are all like the various ways you could take it. I mentioned quantity at a lot. Initial timings, start at nighttime is if you're going to start, because then you could sleep off any funky feelings if you don't want that. And then if a person is on pain medications, antidepressants, or benzodiazepine, sleep med, anything that you think can make you feel dizzy or odd, take it at least 1 or 2 hours separately from that medicine, just so you can know what is cannabis doing to you versus your regular medicine. But if you take them at the same time and they both hit you at the same time, then you might be in for a world of dizziness and not feeling right. Over time, though, there are folks who just, they know their timing and they get it down. But for those who are figuring out their regimen, make sure you separate it and write down what time you do it. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, if you're starting to sleep better, start reducing your sleep medication. Don't go off anything cold turkey, though. You can have withdrawal, especially with benzodiazepines like Xanax and Klonopin and such. So it's best done with your physician so you can write out a schedule of how to reduce your other medications. And I have seen patients get off of their Ambien and get off of their Xanax, and they use cannabis as their sleep or anxiety aid. I'd love for them to use something else too and not need anything at all, but we do what we can. So just to reiterate, let THC quantity drive the dose, sorry. There's no known magical CBD dose. Kind of just get what goes with the formula you bought. If you're new to cannabis or uber sensitive like I would be, you want 1.25 to 2.5 milligrams of THC. And you can calculate that from the edible you bought. You can calculate it from the drops, from the tincture you bought. So there are ways to control it and then let everything else sort of just fall into place. There are differences between indicas and sativas. I forgot to make a slide on that. But these are just general rules of thumb. I already mentioned that if you're on an edible every night, you can go up by 1.25 or 2.5 milligram of THC night by night. Eventually, I'd say the average THC my patients take, typically 2.5 to 5 milligrams. My patients just want that low. They just want to sleep. They're not interested in being intoxicated or high. And then I have some who have to take 10 or 20 milligrams a night because the little one doesn't do anything for them. And that probably has to do with their livers running through the drug really fast. Me, the opposite. I'm like 1.25 if I even ever need it. So tincture, so the liquid, which I said hits faster, you could redose every 2 or 3 hours on that one. If you took a really small dose and it's been 2 hours and you feel nothing, then you could take 5 more drops and just go up. But keep track of how it works so that you know what your magic number of drops are. And then you'll know, okay, in about 30 minutes, this is going to hit me. Okay, is that it? And when it does, is that a satisfactory feeling you're getting? Is it helping you feel relaxed? Is it helping your pain? Is it doing good things for you, or do you feel weird, intoxicated, strange? Okay, so safety-wise, there's a lot. Like I said, we know about safety because of NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse. This came out in the New York Times last October. It was very, very damning about cannabis. And it has a whole bunch of folks who've had really bad experiences with it. And yes, you can have this. So I'm here to not be pro or con. It's just, here's what it is. It's bad, good. It is what it is. And this is a woman who developed cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. So every time she used any marijuana, she'd feel nauseous. I don't know if she threw up, but she got sick, and just being in the ER over and over again. The only treatment for cannabis hyperemesis syndrome is to stop. And there are a lot of people who are developing this. My husband's an ER physician, so after festivals and concerts, they'll see the teenagers come, or the young ones come in. Unfortunately, it does create a little bias. As soon as you see a 20, 30-year-old someone who's throwing up, the ER doc is probably the staff is already going, some cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. So you never want to ignore that it might be an appendicitis or something like really dire, but one of the clues that it might be this syndrome, cannabis hyperemesis, is taking hot showers helps you feel better. And it has to do with this receptor that it may be a genetic thing with cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, because there's a receptor that if that's off in you, you're more sensitive to cannabis, even the smallest amounts. But again, stopping is the only way. So that's the shower scene. But some people will not only use hot water, they might even use hot pepper cream on the belly, but make sure you're wearing gloves. Because if you do this, you're going to burn your eyes. You forget all about your problems because your eyes are burning. And then if you're in the ER, you're going to get medications to help you calm down. Obviously, these are not things that you're going to get unless you were in the ER. But that is your clue. And this is when you have a lot of vomiting or nausea, that's been going on for over 6 months. So it's not like, oh, I had it once and it made me sick. You got to have a pattern with it, and then that becomes the diagnosis. This is a long list. Again, it's going to be on the slides, but we are seeing more cannabis overuse syndrome. And there's a lot of, it's a little bit of a low bar for diagnosing people with the disorder. So our toxicologists and addiction specialists are pretty up in arms about how much cannabis overuse syndrome there is. But I don't know, when there's only 2, I'm going to argue with this diagnosis, because I don't know. There's some, here we go. Developing tolerance, the very bottom. You're going to develop tolerance when you use anything for a long time. And that's like, okay, does that make you an overuser? So I think it's better to take breaks anyway, take tolerance breaks. So if you're having to use cannabis on a regular basis and you're finding that you need more and more because it's not doing the trick, it's going to be hard, but maybe take a 3-day break, let your receptors refresh, and then try it again and see how it goes. So there's, so I didn't have a side effects slide, but side effects of cannabis can be dry eyes, losing motivation. We talked about feeling nauseous, which is paradoxical, but can happen. Feeling out of body or like a time disconnect. What else? There's, I mentioned dry eyes. Oh, slower thinking, slower reaction time when driving, which is why impaired driving is not good. Whereas alcohol is more of a recklessness, cannabis is a slow reactivity. They're both bad for driving. Memory, so your memory is not going to be as great, or your cognitive sharpness may be impaired. Now, I have a few patients who say, I did better on my test because my migraines weren't kicking in because I was on cannabis and I got an A instead of a B minus. So I'm like, okay, so whatever it is, there are folks who feel a lot more functional on cannabis, but in the general rule of thumb is it's not good for that. Okay, so here's another patient. This is a real patient, 52-year-old man who has fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain syndrome, and PTSD, who insists that the only thing that works for me is when I smoke it. But I'm also feeling nauseous on it too, so it's rough because like he's probably got some CH, cannabis hyperemesis, or he's overusing it, but it works. And edibles don't work. He's just crossed it off in his brain, which is unfortunate because that's a whole category that could have helped you and saved you from pollution in the lungs, but also from heart disease. And so there are some big studies looking at a lot of people who use cannabis, finding that they may have more heart disease issues than people who don't use cannabis. There are I think a lot of flaws with this study, but this is what your cardiologist is going to stand on, and people who are really nervous about cannabis, like, nope, you're going to get a heart attack and stroke and die. And it's like, okay, it's a bit extreme. It depends. And so this article, what it's missing is that they didn't study the smokers versus the edible users versus the topical cream users. We really need that kind of study. They lumped everyone together. So I'm like, I don't know. So I'm going to presume, common sense says if you smoke it a lot, you're probably in this group. So when I have a patient like who's smoking cannabis 2 or 3 times a day every day, I'm thinking, oh gosh, cannabis overuse syndrome. I know it helps your PTSD and fibro, but what else are you doing to help yourself? We can't just rely on cannabis all day, every day to get you through life. So we're going to do integrative therapies like talk therapy, acupuncture, massage therapy, improve your diet. Let's try to get your sleep scheduled. So there's so many things, but anyway, the smokers in this study were about 74% of the participants. So I'd love to see a follow-up, but there are many, like American College of Cardiology's, you're not going to see a lot of cardiologists supporting cannabis use. But if you say, well, what about edibles and what about tinctures? I don't know, test your cardiologist, test your doctors and see how they feel about it. Okay, here's another one. This is basically the same. And they tried to say, well, what if you compared smokers of tobacco with smokers of cannabis? And they found that it was it still mattered. It wasn't, people who smoke cannabis still are, I think, doing harm to the lungs. And what smoke does is it actually causes your blood vessels to constrict. And what do we need for a healthy heart is nice, full blood flow going everywhere. So over time, you get the wrong mix of events happen to a person. They're super stressed. They've been smoking cannabis too long. They get COVID, or they have like 3 weeks of insomnia, or some bad luck, genetic thing happens, and boom, there's a heart attack or stroke that happens to them. So try to prevent those things from happening by cutting down the toxic burden that you carry, reduce the amount of smoking, vaping that one's doing. Use another form of cannabis if you can. Okay. And then beware, this is my common sense, if you have young kids around, you gotta lock this stuff up, because when it looks tasty and fun, we have an increase in pediatric accidental ingestion of cannabis edibles. This is a big argument to, make it illegal again, but prohibition doesn't really work. So be wary that getting into mom and dad's bag of stuff from the wedding that had the cannabis edibles is the party favor, whatnot, your kids can get into that OD and then have a real big issue. In a pediatric, when a kid eats marijuana by accident, they look sleepy, typically. But it depends on what stage you find them in. But if they're really dopey and sleepy, you got to look everywhere, figure out what they got into. Hallucinations can occur if you have if they ate a lot of it, so they're seeing stuff. Either way, get them to the ER because you got to figure out what they had. But usually you can find the empty wrappers of stuff. Delta 8, so there's a whole like loophole of things happening because hemp is legal to buy and sell everywhere, gas stations and beauty salons and whatnot. And you can actually take CBD and extract THC from it and call it and sell it at Binny's. You were talking about that, and they'll have 10 milligrams of THC in a drink, which to me is wrong because you should know, people should know what they're getting. They're basically getting what you would get in a dispensary, but because it's coming from hemp, there's that loophole. And another loophole has been Delta 8, which is very closely related to Delta 9, so it is intoxicating. So if people know, my antidote to all of this loophole shenanigans is be educated. So if you know you're getting a drink from somewhere and it says on their THC and you're like, wow, if I drink 2 servings of this, which is the whole can, if 1 serving has 5 milligrams of THC, I've just had 10 if I drink the whole thing. How do I feel on 10? Well, for me, if I drink 10, I'm going to be in a dizzy fest and want to just lay down. Someone else might be like, yeah, 10 is perfect for me to just relax and I'm fine. But you need to know what your limit is with THC and know. So if you read the label, that'll help you supersede any worries like, did it come from hemp or did it come from a dispensary? Delta 8 also is something that states are working on to relegate back to dispensaries instead of being able to sell just anywhere. Because I accidentally took a Delta 8 tincture and definitely intoxicated. So I know because I'm super sensitive. There are other formulas too, as the chemists get around loopholes. There's another form called Delta 10 oxoacetate, and that is really flammable when made, and when taken, it actually can have hallucinatory properties. Because on the street, in the illegal market, you're going to get people who have a bigger, better high, and that's not cannabis anymore from a plant. So be wary of that. And I wanted to contrast this with the opioid epidemic, which was here before COVID, and the vaping epidemic, that what are people doing for chronic pain management? Well, look at the results of that, and this is death. Okay, so an overdose, these have been going up over the years. I think it's tapering off a little bit, but cannabis is not associated by itself, if you took way too much by itself, not associated with toxic overdoses. And the reason is probably because we don't have cannabinoid receptors in our brainstem. So you could feel really sick, you could be out for weeks from a big dose, but if you overdose on opioids, you can blunt your respiratory breathing drive so much so that you stop breathing and die from one episode, one dose that was too much. So keeping that in mind, we've been needing a solution for chronic pain management for a long time. Cannabis is part of that solution, but you can see it's complicated and messy. And this is benzodiazepine deaths as well, in combination with opioids. Oh yeah, oh my goodness. So let's see, oh, I lost my, okay, yellow line is benzodiazepines in combination with synthetic opioids like fentanyl and hydrocodone, other than methadone. And then the white line, I guess you can't see it, this is when you're just on benzos by itself. So thankfully that's a flat line. But anytime you start combining benzos with pain meds, you're gonna have an issue. But I think, this last slide here, this is opioids. The yellow line is prescription opioids, and then in combination with synthetic opioids. The white line is prescription opioids without any other. Either way, you can see that there was a huge explosion of trend going up through 2012, and That's a lot. It's a lot of people who've been dying. So we, again, points to the fact that this is, we need other solutions for pain management. And then in comparison to other substances, and this was published in American Scientist in 2006, so we need an update. But you can see here, I don't have a pointer, but you've got the psychedelics, LSD and psilocybin. The y-axis is the potential for dependence, and then lethal dose is on the horizontal axis. Marijuana is up there that you can get dependent on it. It's about a 9 to 17% risk of becoming addicted to cannabis, depending on what age you started and how much you use. And when we look at other substances like nicotine, high level of addiction and high level of harm, as well as we get into our legal drug alcohol, widely available, morphine, heroin, way at the top. Caffeine, interestingly, is there. It's not zero dependence risk, and it does apparently have a potential lethal dose. If you took too much, you're going to probably stimulate your heart so much you go into a crisis. And so lifetime dependence risks also in relation to other substances. The worst is cigarettes, nicotine. Then you move down, heroin, also bad, cocaine, bad, alcohol, bad. And then you have cannabis, marijuana, 9%. So when I, if I held you at gunpoint and said, you have to pick a substance that I'm going to make you addicted to, what would you pick? And it has to be on this list. Probably pick marijuana, but it still has bad associated with it. Because if you do talk to someone who's dependent on it, they're in a world of hurt as well, and family and relationships and jobs have been altered. So those are not the patients I typically see. So if we had someone here in the addiction and in the addiction world talking about how difficult it is, still not anything to sneeze at. But I would say if you had to pick, gosh, how many people have we taken care of for heroin, overdose, cocaine? All bad. Okay, now this is another interesting slide looking at harm to self and harm to society. So the y-axis, the vertical one, is the score for harm to others. We're talking crime and driving accidents and whatnot. Cannabis is not free of that. It's guilty, it's charged to a degree. And then you have alcohol, our legal drug, way up there. How many drunk driving accidents, mortality, but also harm to self, esophageal varices and bleeding, ulcers, liver getting totally boxed, cirrhosis. There's a lot of issues here. Okay, consumer challenges. Okay, so now that you know a lot about cannabis, when you look at a label, this is all that's really required, is how much CBD and THC are on it. Would you give this to a newbie? Would you take this if you've never had cannabis before? No, because look at how little CBD in there. This is an all THC formula, okay? So you already know. And it's a sativa, so that may be more activating, more daytime, creativity. Some people, the cannabis purists don't believe that that's true anymore. Everything's been so hybridized that they don't believe anything about sativa and indica are different anymore. I go by THC dose, but I still have patients who really think that when they take a sativa, they use it more for daytime. Social, lifts the mood if you're feeling depressed, creativity may be enhanced, but at the same time, it can be maybe a little more anxiety and panic provoking for those who are sensitive. Whereas indica, we think of cannabis indica, into bed, so that's how I remember, or into couch, more relaxing, more sedating. Okay, this is what we'd like to see the labels look like, but this is going to cost money. The industry's already complaining that everything is so regulated that they can't make any money, but it would be nice if we had a lot more information. And this is a label that's been proposed by David Nathan, who's an addiction psychiatrist at Princeton. So anyway, I think this would be great, but you can imagine anytime we regulate an industry, this is going to cost money. But I would love to know how much THC there is and CBD, the other cannabinoids, and then the terpenes, limonene and pinene. Pinene may be good for memory. And we want to know what are the other ingredients in there as well, with lot numbers and tracking. So anyway, what I'm seeing in the supply chain now, if you go to a dispensary, we're not finding as many of the low THC products. I know they're around, but they're just harder to find because medical cannabis patients aren't the big money makers. They take longer, they ask a lot of questions, and they buy this much. Like if you're a business person, you want the person to just like, give me my stuff, I want it in and out, and you serve 30 people or 3 in them. So do the math. So the system's not really set up for patients anymore. But I have found that if you wanted to make your own tincture and you can't find a low THC formula, make your own. Buy CBD hemp oil from a good source. Get your THC-rich tincture you just bought and dilute it 1 drop of THC to 20 drops of CBD. And you've just made yourself a 20-to-1 CBD to THC formula, which is hard to find, I think, in the dispensaries. If anyone can figure out how to make a good patch that works, you should share that as common knowledge. So DIY, so when you dilute it, you can make them as dilute or strong as you want with THC. Because you'll have no problem finding high THC tinctures in the dispensary. The other issues are, so in Illinois, anyone can certify a patient for eligibility in the program. We just have to have a bona fide relationship with you. We're not meeting in a hotel room on a Craigslist. That actually happened. You have to meet in a legit office setting, and not just once. You have to have a real relationship. But one of the biggest issues here is signing up. The technology is a pain, and they just upgraded their website. But it's doable. But I think it would be a valuable resource. Maybe a Levy Center service is medical cannabis certification, how to, because you have to upload your driver's license and a passport quality photo of yourself. But the website's still dodgy. And one thing to consider too is cost. And I have patients who can't afford the fancy patches and the tinctures, and it's the flower they can afford. I never give anyone a hard time about that, because you know how I felt about smoking. But maybe you can make your own butters, you can make your own oils with it by cooking the cannabis flower in oil for a while and then strain off the flower. Okay, these are a gazillion conditions that are eligible in the state of Illinois. Goodness. So in the States, 74% of Americans live in a cannabis legal state. So that's why we physicians, healthcare professionals, nurses, social workers, pharmacists, we need to know about this instead of our patients bringing us the article. That's embarrassing. So one of my big professional goals in life is to educate more people about this in the healthcare profession so that we're not the ones behind, because we are. And you can see here the blue states have a medical cannabis program. The orange ones, any orange state that has a rec program started medical. And then the gray states, there's just a few that have 0 laws. It's completely illegal. So we're getting there. And most Americans live in a legal state. Your top 5 dispensary-rich states are the ones listed: California, Colorado, Oklahoma, Florida, and Michigan. And trust me, I know a lot of patients who drive to Michigan because it's a lot cheaper. But technically, it's illegal to travel across state lines with cannabis because it's federally illegal. So, okay, there's a lot of laws that are kind of in limbo about this, and I don't know if we're going to hear about rescheduling. Are they going to take cannabis off Schedule 1 and put it to Schedule 3 or Schedule 2, or even just take it away and just make it like alcohol? We don't know. I have a publication coming up in JAMA Open Network that proposes what our curriculum should look like for medical students. And hopefully we bring that to pharmacy and nursing, really basic stuff. But there's nothing in med schools that tell your students what you're supposed to say about cannabis in their education. Some resources, people ask what's a good book. This is a great book, Medical Marijuana by Dr. Mikhail Kogan. And then if you really want to nerd out, this is for interactions, pharmaceutical interactions. And the slides will be available again to you via the link. And then take home point, never eat the whole thing on your first try. How can I say that enough? I even did graphics for you. Okay, that's it. And guidelines. I'm going to get even more into it. So if you see a bag that says it's got 100 mgs of THC, people think, oh, it's 100 in an edible. It's actually in 10 pieces. This actually says it nicely. One piece is a serving. There's 10 mgs of THC per serving. That's really nice. But a lot of times you just see this. It doesn't even say per package. It just says 100 mgs THC. Then you have to read the fine print and deduce that there's 10 pieces. So if that is 10 milligrams, I'm going to do some basic math. How much THC is in one piece in this bag? 10, right? You're going to help your friends, okay? I know you're smarter than it, but 10 milligrams of THC in a serving, which is one piece. One of these guys that you cut, not the whole piece. This piece is 10. So if you wanted to take 2.5 milligrams, what do you do with this section here? 4 pieces, 1. So it's not going to be precise, and then you just eat this little piece right there. Okay? We're learning. I love it. Okay, what if you want 1.25 milligram? What if you want to get even smaller? You have half of one of those. It's like at that point, you're just like, is this really precise? But still, at least you know you're not getting all 10 in one shot if you've never had it before. Okay, and then how long do you wait before trying another piece if what you took isn't working? It did nothing. Maybe like 3. Remember that tinctures are kind of like a 2, but the edibles are like a 3. Because if you have a really slow moving gut, it might hit you in 2 hours and then you're peaking at 3 and then you're not sure. So 3 would be kind of a nice safe bet to take. Then if you took like 1/4 of a piece and it did nothing, and 3 hours later you're ready to start, would you take another 1/4 piece or would you take a half of a piece? I actually think you could take a half of a piece because the 1/4 piece probably just didn't do anything. If you feel like it really did nothing, you could take half. You could go up a little bit. If you're like, I feel something, but I'm a little afraid, then just do another 1/4 piece. And then if you find that that experiment was just good enough, you slept pretty well, and that was enough, you didn't wake up with a hangover, then you figured out that maybe you can just do just a half a piece at night because you took a 1/4 and a 1/4 twice. So. And then the other challenge is when you want to go back for that brand you finally figured out, you go to the dispensary and they don't have it anymore. Okay, so be prepared with backups and remember what you took and ask the dispensary agent, what's the closest thing to this? I don't care if it's peach, strawberry, mint flavored, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's just all about hiding the flavor. Okay, and then, this is that think tank of the National Academy of Science group, and I'm coming to the end. Okay, this is my team. We're excited to start launching, and we still need a lot of approval still, launching group medical visits here at Levy Center. More details are to come, but we're working on the logistics so that if we had a group of 15 people getting together about a common condition, like, hey, let's talk about chronic pain from arthritis, then we would be actually, as a physician, would be up here talking to you specifically about different ways to manage that. But it's not just going to be a class. It's actually a medical visit. We take your vitals, we charge your insurance, all of that stuff. And then we want you to support each other during the class. So there'll be like 4 sessions. One session will be about medications and cannabis, and the next session will be about nutrition, sleep, stress reduction the following week, so that it is really tailored toward your need, and you have a common thread that binds you. So anyway, that we are still working on it, thanks to Judy and the O&L Kuhn Foundation. And yes, thank you. And I think that's all I have. It is now 4 o'clock. Wow, I took the whole time. Q and I'm happy to stay, but I hope I preempted some questions that were there. I forgot to ask for a time stamp. Thank you. I can take questions however long people want to stick around.
Okay, so if you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll come over and bring the microphone to you. And for those on Zoom as well, if you have a question, we'll get to you also. Just type your questions in the Q&A function, please.
I'm sorry, I came in late. What are the benzos?
Oh, benzodiazepines, it's a class of drugs like along the line of alprazolam, diazepam, aka Valium, Xanax. They're given to people who have anxiety, trouble sleeping. They can be highly addictive, though, hard to get off of, but they work really well. But it's a hard substance to get off of once you start. Yes, sir. Oh, let's wait for the microphone.
1 second.
Okay, I was just going to say, are these the kinds of things as candies that you showed? Are those the kinds of things I can buy at the Zen Leaf
Yes.
on Maple Street?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So you can buy, you don't need a cannabis card. So why would anyone get a medical cannabis card? Let's say you're using it purely for medical benefits. You just want that.
You got knee pain like me.
Yeah, so if you're
But
legit,
you want something that's big time.
no, actually, you can buy the same stuff whether you're going to a recreational or medical recreational dispensary. The main benefit of having the certified card, the card, and go through that whole process is you save 30% sales tax.
Oh,
This is significant financial savings.
so how do you go about getting a?
How do you get a card?
Yeah.
So the question in the audience is, what's the process? So you have to have a physician visit, or you can, if you find a nurse practitioner or physician assistant that is allowed to certify patients, they basically are looking at your records and saying, yes, you have conditions that qualify you for the program, and I don't have any concerns about, misuse or whatnot. But you. Mhm. You can ask so the question was, can I just ask my regular doctor? Yes, you absolutely can ask your regular doctor. The question is, will they do it? And I have noticed in some of the groups, like whole groups will say, we are not doing certifications, and they don't have to. So you have to find someone who will, and you want to go somewhere where they know what they're talking about. Yes, you're welcome. Can you use the microphone? Because there's audience
Difference with the dispensaries versus just the shops that sell products that don't have licenses, like medical licenses.
So if there's no
There's
state,
CBD shops.
yeah, the CBD, kratom, they sell all kinds of stuff. They sell vaping products. They're allowed to sell CBD only products. The problem is that they're also selling Delta 8 THC, and they're selling the products that are hemp derived, but they somehow figured out how to concentrate THC and make it intoxicating. So that's why our teenagers and people who aren't able to buy it regularly are going to those shops. Those are going to be probably changed, shut down, but there's a lot of politics around it. So if you go to a recreational dispensary, this is the hard part, is there are a lot of medical patients, but there are only like 20 something actual, I forgot how many. A very small percentage of dispensaries are medical, where they'll honor the card and not charge you sales tax. But they look exactly the same. For instance, Curaleaf in Northbrook is recreational only. The Curaleaf by Old Orchard Mall, recreational only. Curaleaf in Deerfield is med rec. That's the one you go to with your card, so you don't have to pay 30% sales tax. And they may have more knowledgeable bud tenders. I never know. Sorry, dispensary agents don't use bud tenders. So that like you guys have to know that, or I have to tell you, it's not very well set up. Zen Leaf in Rogers Park is medical. So yeah, someone wanted to point out. So I mean, I can just rattle off who's medical, but it doesn't. I mean, if you don't have a card, you don't need a card to go get it. You're just going to spend more. But I have noticed that some of the recreational dispensaries will say Tuesday is discount day, and let's say you have a card. If you have a card, they might give you 30% off because they want to attract your business into the rec dispensary. But all depends on that business itself and which day. I think it's good to have the card because then it's like, it's on your record. People, I don't know, people want to be legitimized with it. And the other benefit is you can grow 5 of your own plants at home. There's no home grow for anyone else but medical patients.
Well, I've been using indica for 10 years to sleep at night. If I made an appointment to see one of the doctors, how would it help me?
Having the card, well, you already know that indica. You already know that indica helps you, so that's already established. It helps you sleep for a long time. But the reason to actually see a physician is if you want to get certified so you can have the card and then avail of the tax benefit. I'm being completely just all practicalities. And if you're wanting to grow your own, then you're allowed to do that legally so that your neighbors can't call the police on you. Yeah. But you already know what you've got. Now, where, you know, depending on where you're getting it, are you getting it from an illegal source? Are you getting it from a dispensary where the stuff is grown in state-sanctioned cultivation centers where they check for mold and other, you know, you don't want it cut with rat poison. I mean, there have been some really bad things out there. So if you're going to get cannabis, get it from a state-sanctioned dispensary. They're not going to be perfect, but at least you know you're getting actual cannabis and nothing else. And with labels that it says, here's how much THC is in it, so you can anticipate, you can anticipate how you're going to feel.
I have another question.
Can you hold the mic a little closer to you, though?
Just
Yeah, we have an audience in virtual land that can't hear unless you're in the mic.
what
Closer.
blood work? Take my blood to see how it's.
So the question is blood work. No, you don't need blood work for something like that. The only time anyone needs blood work for cannabis is usually employment screens, or they're doing a tox screen in the ER and they think you've overdosed on something. But there's no blood work. Cannabis is fat soluble, so it sticks around in your body. You may have used it 2 weeks ago. You're going to be positive. So it doesn't help us clinically. What helps is knowing what you took, how you felt, how much THC was in there. Does it help you? And
It wouldn't do me any good to go out to Blood View.
if you just need the card, there are other physicians that will do that for you. But you know, when we see patients, we're also going to say, why aren't you sleeping well? What are the other factors besides cannabis that could help you? I mean, I wish no one needed anything, but are we working out? Are you eating healthfully? Oh, let's check your cholesterol profile too. Oh, your blood sugars have been up. Did you know that? So that, to me, from a medical standpoint, will capture your other health concerns. But if it's just to get a cannabis card, there are a lot of places you can do that.
Thank you.
Questions?
Do we have it? Okay.
And then are there some Zooms?
Yes.
We'll get some. Maybe we'll get yours first. Yeah.
So, are you as likely if you just have a primary care doc? Is this a conversation that I'm having with that doctor, or does it have to be more functional or integrative? Or
No,
I wasn't here for that, so I just
sure.
wanted that addressed.
I think it's always good to let your regular physician know what you're doing. I think it's good to educate them too. Like, hey, and by the way, it helps me sleep. And did you know I got off my Ativan last summer because of this? I think it's more the patient educating the physician. But if, for instance, there was a case up here. I don't know if you were in the room yet, but a person who had a urinary tract infection went on an antibiotic and it made her dizzy, and it never did before. She was using cannabis regularly. Like, you would want them to know that there was another medication. There's a medication cannabis interaction. So I think if an issue comes up, then bring it up. But for the most part, they're going to say, well, I hope you're not smoking it. I mean, that's really probably what you're going to hear. Don't drive under the influence. Those are the two big safety messages.
What was interesting on my intake from my doctor, you got to fill out the questionnaire or whatever, and that's one of the things. Do you smoke marijuana? And I'm like, no. But they didn't ask, are you eating edibles or having edibles or anything like that. So anyway, this is all new
Yeah.
to me as well, and I have a very low tolerance because my first experience with an edible was my daughter gave me a whole
And you ate the whole thing?
Well, I ate the whole thing, and I
You
had
violated the cardinal.
had 2 glasses of wine, and I
Oh, and the
literally just
Ooh.
fell straight out and broke a table at home, and
Oh my God.
and so everybody laughed, and there was a big, I didn't hurt myself, but so, and then I woke up to this beautiful nurse, my wife, that was taking care of me, and I was like, what happened? But anyway, so
Okay, everyone take note of that story. And don't do it. But that's, first time, that's a pretty big dose of lots of intoxicants on, but like big doses. So, okay, when we learn from that. Thankfully, you were okay, but, you know. Other questions, were there on Zoom? Oh, I see.
Yeah, would you like us to read the questions
Sure,
off to
yeah,
you?
probably easier.
Okay. So the first question is, how does one know there is no THC in CBD capsules?
So by law, there's supposed to be less than 0.3% THC in a CBD capsule derived from hemp. So presume there may be trace amounts. So if you're someone who is going to be drug tested for employment screening, I wouldn't even use CBD at all because you don't want anything showing up in your blood work for at least a month. So there may be a little bit in there because by law you can have 0.3%. The only way to really know is if you ask the company for their COA, their certificate of authenticity. COA, I forgot what it stands for, but their forms will say like exactly how much THC CBD was found, but most people don't ask for that. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, the second question is this covered by Medicare?
No, that was easy. Nope, cash only, please. And that's only because it's a Schedule I drug, so you can't even, the cannabis dispensaries can only take cash, and they can't, there's banking laws, there's a whole bunch of stuff surrounded by this. But so Medicare will be the very, 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 very last group to ever pick it up. Okay, and then here's a question. Can you use as needed? I purchased a gummy with 20-to-1 CBD THC, which is a good choice. High CBD, very low THC. And you didn't want the THC, but they didn't sell these. Oh, I used one to give me confidence when I was to go out to a party. I worked nicely, but is there a CBD dose that would be good for sleep? As I want to get rid of taking Ambien, taking half a pill a night currently. We don't know what the magic dose is for anybody when it comes to trying to substitute a sleep med. So what you could do is just try the CBD only formula, and I think it's okay to do with the Ambien, but it's buyer beware, because if you get too sedated on both, you know, you might wake up with a hangover. So you could try a night without Ambien, but you might not sleep. If you try the CBD only formula and you do all right on it, then you know, hey, maybe I can start substituting. But you definitely want to do that with a physician, because if a person's been on Ambien for a while, you want to cut that pill and then add your cannabinoid with it and see if you get a very similar response. As you start to make that Ambien portion smaller and smaller, maybe taking a little more cannabis to make up the shortfall if your goal is to get off of that drug. But I work with patients specifically on how to do that, but I can't tell you exactly how to do it here because you're not my patient. Okay, is the recording going to be available? I joined late.
Yes, the recording, there will be
Okay.
a recording available in about a week and to a week and a half.
Okay. Oh, and I skipped it. So I got approved for certification for neuropathy, and the dispensary said if I had this, I could get a discount on purchases. Is there a way to get this for low or no cost? So that dispensary might actually be a recreational only dispensary. I don't know why, because you either don't have to pay sales tax or very low sales tax as a medical patient. So there is no added discount for anything. I don't understand why they would tell you that unless they're recreational. It doesn't make sense. The question, what they told you doesn't make sense to me. And how, is there a way to get this for low or no cost? Well, if you're a medical patient and you can grow it yourself, there's an investment in the setup, but then over time, if you can grow tomatoes, apparently you can grow cannabis, but maybe at some point you're good at it and it becomes lower cost because you're growing your own at home. That's the only way that I know, but I do know people will skip state lines and go to Michigan where it's a lot cheaper. I really wish that the prices would come down much more around here, but there's just so much cost involved in this whole thing, and hopefully we'll see prices come down to earth soon. Another question, there are so many different types of marijuana buds. How do you know which kind of bud to choose for sleep aid, for example? So I would go with an indica if you can tell if that is true. And then again, THC. When you're talking about cannabis buds, that sounds like you're gonna smoke it. So unless you're gonna cook it in butter, take the flower and then cook it in something, You're probably better off just making sure it's an indica or indica hybrid. When I certified, they asked for an ID that was less than 30 days, and I happen to have this, but why is this asked for? Oh, you have to prove who you are. When you go to the dispensary with your cannabis card, you still have to prove that you're the person on the card. So got to make sure your driver's license or your state ID are up to date. And I don't know, other states do honor cannabis cards. I forget which ones those are, but you're not supposed to travel across state lines with that. And I just already discussed what are the advantages of getting a medical card is sales tax and home grow allowance. And so when people don't want the card, they either don't want their name on a record, even though it's all secure. I mean, this is in the state's database and they just upped the security on that, or they don't want to hassle with the physician visit and the certification process. And then you have to renew your card every 3 years and pay a $50 fee. So usually people don't want to deal with the hassle. But then you pay more as a sales tax. If you don't use it that much, it's fine. Don't get a card. You can just buy it. If you only go like once every 3 months, it may not be worth having the card. But if you're going regularly, you basically have to save $75 in sales tax to make it worth your while, because that's how much the certification costs. Can you charge your purchase? Nope. Cash. Maybe that may change though. So what are some close places to get CBD products in the Chicago North Side? Well, I know, so if I may, this is not a CME program, but the Endeavor Wellness Shop, we have vetted all of the CBD products from hemp to make sure we looked at the COA, the THC levels are 0 or very, very small. So we are in Glenview and we're in the Glen. So I think my information was on that last slide. There's also a company it's a website called consumerlab.com where you can look up different CBD brands that were tested and then you can try and find those brands. Okay, I'm on blood pressure meds. Is there a dose level that maximizes impact of THC? That's a hard question to answer without you being my patient. So there's no blood test. You basically would try it and see what happens to your blood pressure. I know it sounds crazy, but that's the only way we would know. Could you send me the link to the recording? Yes, somebody should. If you grow, is there a way to consume it without smoking it? And yes, so you would have to probably watch several YouTube videos on how to process your plant, to dry it, and then cook it. There's actually these special oil, I don't know, like you can infuse all kinds of things if you want to make garlic butter or whatnot with chives, but apparently you can also put cannabis in there and you just basically sit there and slow cook it for a long time to get everything out.
When is treated data be available?
Oh, so the recording would be probably a week and a half, you say?
Recording will be available in about a week, and you will also be emailed a copy of the PowerPoint or in addition to the recording as well.
And then the one quick, I'll get through the quick one. Grow your own is probably mostly consumed by smoking. That's true. But yeah, why not I have patients who make their own creams. They make their own tinctures themselves. They grow it because it's just so expensive. And then where can you buy seeds? This is like, you can look online. It's easy to find. Okay, question in the audience. Thanks for hanging with. And I realized we were actually till 4:30, so I'm not late. Okay, okay. You're next.
I
She's
understand.
gonna be, we'll hand you the microphone next. Okay, you're next. Please.
There's a big difference between California's marijuana and Illinois. And apparently I have heard that Illinois stinks.
I don't know, reputation wise, I have patients who use it well. Like it with any reputation, what's that based on? Like 3 people's opinions? I don't believe anything like that.
No.
I could say though, price wise, you probably get a better deal in California, because did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
I had a slide that showed it's like one of the top 5 most dispensary dense places. So the economics will say the more supply there is, the price goes down. But again, that's far away. So you can't mail it because of the federal rules. So I wouldn't knock anything until you literally try it. Oh, Ireland, I don't.
Not
There are some countries where it is legal, like in Israel, they have a medical program, but you have to be a citizen, and there's a lot of rules. But we're Canada. I mean, you can go up to Canada and you can get it recreationally. So there's a worldwide movement going on as well. But it really depends. There's a question in the back, so we're going to bring you the microphone first before you ask, so everyone can hear it.
So you mentioned using cannabis for sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
You say it's only good for 3 hours. So how does that?
Oh no, you can check it. You'll feel it by 3 hours. If you haven't felt an effect, you can redose. But if you get the right dose that first time, second time around, it could last 7-8 hours. So what I mean by the 3 hours is if you found that the tiny dose you took, you still woke up anyway, it meant you didn't take enough
So you're going to wake up anyway because you don't sleep. So
exactly. So that means the next night you take more than you did the first night, because the first night's dose obviously didn't work because you woke up in 3 hours. And so, but you don't want to start with too much at first, because then if you overdose, you're going to feel really weird.
Okay, thank you.
Thankfully not die, most likely you won't die. Good. Did we cover all the questions online too? I think we had some ahead of time too. I don't know. Did we cover? Yeah. Oh, they made a, but I feel like many of them were there. Well, anyway, I don't know if there are any leftover questions. We're almost done with time anyway. So, okay. Okay, we did all the questions, and thank you so much, everyone, for your kind attention in the room and outside of the room. Okay, use safely or don't use it at all. Ooh, I just made it up now. Thank you so much.
And thank you again for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's program. You can check out our YouTube channel, Levy Senior Center Foundation, or give our website a visit for a link to this and past programs. A recording of this lecture will be available to watch on our YouTube channel within about a week. Please consider supporting the Levy Senior Center Foundation with a donation today. Your generous donations help us to continue to create opportunities to serve older adults in our community by providing informative and entertaining programming, as well as making needed improvements to the Levy Senior Center. The foundation table on the way out has a donation box if you wish to donate today. You can also donate online at levyseniorcenterfoundation.org or scan. We don't have a QR code. But thank you again, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.